Sometimes bravery isn't about doing something big, but actually doing something small. In the details of Old Man Wither's unusual dying request, he had spelled out that being brave might look different to different people. That to some, it might be revisiting the joys of your youth again, to do something you always loved to do or never got the chance to do, to experience life with that same wide-eyed wonder we had when we were kids, as if anything was possible and probable, the dreams you outgrew or were talked out of. Now, to some, the opportunity to revisit their childhood was easy, which is why it wasn't unusual that year to see someone skateboarding down the street or a grown man trick-or-treating. Revisiting childhood became to many a delicious invitation, but not to Ed Jenkins. Ed Jenkins was a no-frills man. He lived by a checklist of things that made sense and made money. Ed believed that your worth was determined by how much money you have in the bank, where you live, what you drive, who you know, and how many hours you can work in a week. Ed had worked hard his whole life, and he was proud of what he had accomplished for his 5 children and wife. Ed was a provider, which, like anything, in moderation can be a good thing. But Ed had left moderation a long time ago. So when the conversation of the challenge came up again at the dinner table, while all 5 of his children and his wife were giving him that look that said, "Can we, Dad? Can we?" he erupted. "Do something brave," he barked. "I've never heard of such nonsense. Bravery is going to work every day. Bravery is paying your bills. Bravery is preparing for your future." Act like a child again. He was disgusted and appalled at this silly request. I mean, who ever heard of such a thing? He was a busy man, a salesman. If he didn't work, he didn't get paid. And this was his busy season. This couldn't have come at a worse time. Act like a child. He didn't even get to act like a child when he was a child. He had closed that door a long time ago and never looked back. Childhood was overrated, and he would not be revisiting that anytime soon. Now, don't be mad at Ed. Like anybody, if you knew his story, you would understand how he sees the world and why he does the things he does. Not everybody had a childhood worth repeating, and some doors probably shouldn't be opened. "We're not participating in such foolishness," he announced to his wife and children, with his traditional end-of-discussion face. And he meant it, till his wife grabbed his arm and gave him that look that she reserved just for the battles she felt were worth fighting. Sarah was quiet and reserved, and the kind of wife Ed needed. Now, don't mistake her for weak. No, Sarah had a wisdom and a kindness that always managed to sneak into Ed's vulnerable places. They were a good fit, and he listened to her more than he would ever let on. Like any husband and wife who've pretty much grown up together, you can have a whole conversation in front of the children without saying a word. One simple, warm hand placed over Ed's hand, a sweet smile, and an expression that said, "I don't often ask you for much, but this, do it for me," was all that it took. "Well, what do you suggest we do?" he asked, angrily, to his wife and children who sat there quietly staring down at their plates. Finally, the youngest one, Seth, looked up in courageous defiance and announced, "I want to jump in the leaves. You never let us jump in the leaves." If you knew this family, you would see that Seth is the spitting image of his father. And that expression on his face, well, for Ed, was like looking in a mirror. What nobody in the room knew was that Seth had just thrown Ed back to the very thing he had always wanted to do as a child, to the moments he used to watch that family across the street on Saturdays, wrapped up in their sweaters and toboggans, raking leaves and jumping, being chased by their dog in the front yard, a big white dog with a red collar. I know, big deal. So a family's raking leaves on a Saturday. We did that growing up, and me and my sister complained about it the whole time. I don't exactly look back to that in fondness, but I guess it depends on where you sit, like a kid looking in from a different house. The entire family held their breath at Seth's request, out of excitement and, well, a little shock, and even the idea of seeing their dad jump in a pile of leaves. Ed sighed and was like, "All right, Yard needs raking anyway. We can save money doing it ourselves. We'll have a meeting after dinner and plan it all out. Good thing it's a holiday weekend. Can't make client calls anyway." Sarah smiled at him and kissed his head as she cleared the table. "I'm not sure any family goes about the feat of raking leaves with the planning Ed put into it. The necessary supplies, the raking system, how high should the pile be for maximum jumping. But even Ed couldn't suck the excitement out of the air as they bundled up and grabbed their rakes on Saturday morning. There was more than one curtain flickering on the street, as undoubtedly people were peeking out at this strange thing happening in Ed Jenkins' yard of all places. They raked all the leaves into one giant pile directly under that big tree in the corner and decided it wasn't high enough, so they started going to other houses and asking for some of their leaves. They had made the pile directly under that really big branch and placed a ladder up against it so you could climb out on the limb and jump from even higher up. Ed's idea, which sounded like fun even if the branch broke on Ed's turn, and he didn't even get mad. The pile of leaves they made could be seen all the way down the street, and the sound of them laughing could be heard even further. And get this, Ed was laughing loudest of all. They had never heard their father really laugh like this before. It was kind of weird, with leaves stuck in his hair and getting dirt on his sweater, watching him fall back into the leaves with his arms outstretched, just laying there staring up into the sky. That's what you could see. What you couldn't see, well, I guess you could say that the child he never got to be was born. They stayed in that yard until it got too dark to see and then sat in lawn chairs sipping hot chocolate. That was the best day ever. A few days later, Ed came home from work with a surprise for the family. A dog, that's right, a big white one with a red collar that ate Ed's work shoes and two of his good ties and got out every time someone left open the front door and Ed had to chase him around the neighborhood, and that Ed threatened to give away at least once a week, but never went through with it. Ed Jenkins, as it would turn out, would never live long enough to enjoy his full retirement or see all of his children get married. After his funeral, they sat around telling stories about their dad, starting with their favorite, that began by pointing to that picture above the fireplace of them laying in a pile of leaves, laughing up to the sky. Everyone would agree that Ed was a good provider for his family. And thanks to Old Man Withers and a silly challenge, Ed provided something worth much more than money, a memory worth keeping. Hey everybody, Kelly Swanson here. Hope y'all are all doing okay. Hope that spring is starting to show itself for those of us who've had a lot of cold weather for their winter. I hope you loved episode 5 as much as I did. I think sometimes it's in the smallest of stories where we find our biggest messages. And people always ask me, where do you get ideas for your stories? And they are all around me. We just have to open our eyes and look. I say you kind of go through life as a writer and a storyteller with a Polaroid, if you're old enough to remember what that is, the camera that takes the snapshot. And you just look for moments. I don't look for big stories. I look for moments like a snapshot in a Polaroid. And then I look for characters that we can identify with. And I don't know, but I can identify with the father in this story, being very driven to do what's necessary to provide for the family. And I just think it's a beautiful illustration of taking a moment, I don't know, to do the small things. It doesn't cost any money to go rake the leaves and jump in them with your children. Great. Now my son's going to ask me to go do it. I want to give a shout out to Chuck and his team at Primo Productions. These videos are amazing. I simply put the words on paper. They bring them to life. I hope you're noticing the techniques. If you have anything to do with video editing and production, then you will know all the hours it takes to choose the right angle and to choose which clips and to put music in it and Every moment you see often required hours of work in the background. So thank you, Chuck, and your team. Without you, these stories would be so much less. Thank you to my patrons. I really appreciate your patronage. You make this possible for us to do what we do and for me to bring my art to life. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can become a patron of Pride's Hollow, which I think has some pretty cool benefits, because not only am I creating this story series in this town with all these people who've lived in my head forever, we're also creating a cyber town, if you will. We're still kind of building it to the beginning stages. But as the episode grows, we'll spend more time doing things online as a town. So you can get your own key to the city and become part of the community. There are links below the video that will tell you how to go to patreon.com/Kelly Swanson to hear more about how to become a patron. I hope that you have subscribed to the channel. Click below. It really helps me out if you are an official subscriber. Any comments you can make on the video are most appreciated. That also helps me to build a following and to get this out there. I don't know how to get my stories out to the world other than this. When you like it, when you share it on social media, you are helping me so much to share my dream with the world. So if you feel compelled to share these episodes or start a conversation, there is a community thread on this YouTube channel. It's kind of like its own Facebook. It's new and different for most of us. We're not used to using it, but feel free to start sending me messages there. I will get them. We can start our own conversations. As with any episode, I like to give you a challenge, and this challenge is to go find your own pile of leaves. No, it may not literally be a pile of leaves, but your own tiny moment that is simple, easy, doesn't cost anything, when you can just laugh and enjoy your life a little bit more. That to me is what bravery is about. And that's what the show is all about. I hope you'll join us for the next episode. We'll keep you posted when it's coming, and I think you're going to like it. I think the next one is Arliss and the Power Washer. We're going to go to the silly side for the next episode. I wish you all the best, and I hope that your lives are returning to more of a normal state. I'll see you next time. Bye. And so the sun sets on this episode's guest of what one more did with that old man's request. But soon I'll be back with a new tale to unfold, for there are many more stories still left to be told. For this challenge has started with no end in sight, as each person closes their eyes and takes flight. But until next time, maybe you'll find the chance to close your eyes and join in the dance. Maybe this story whispered from that old man's grave will push you to find out what happens when you choose to be brave.